Hello, and welcome back to a slightly different episode of ChattyAF, one that may have a slightly different layout than what you're used to, our loyal viewers at home. My name is William from the Fulbright office here at NCU. I'm sat next to
me, Francis, your
Francis,
host. My other co-host today, Alden, he's quite busy, and so I had to find a better...
He's abandoned us.
Yes,
He's left.
Yes, I now have a better host, William, and today we have a special guest, a professor.
Yeah.
And so I'll let you take it away.
Yeah, so we're here today with Whyjay from... What department are you from, Whyjay?
Hello, William. Hello, Francis. Well, I'm Whyjay. So I'm now assistant professor at our Center of the Space and Remote Sensing Research.
Okay, so that's a big step for us at the pod to have a real professor here. Yeah.
All the other guests, we love our guests, but
we love all of you.
We
all of our viewers and guests.
But they're only students. So today, I'm really excited to get to hear about your career journey. How did you end up here at NCU as a professor?
Well, that's a good question. I was born and raised in Taiwan.
Oh.
So, and then I grew up here. Well, not in Taoyuan, but in Taipei. And then I lived there for over 20 years. I studied my bachelor and I studied my master, both in Taipei.
Oh.
And then after that, I realized that, for my specific career goal, I was interested in planetary science at that time. And I was like, okay, so there is actually no rich resources available for me in Taiwan. So, I had to go to a different country to seek for resources and training.
Yeah.
So basically, that's for my overall initial motivation for study abroad.
Where did you end up for your PhD?
And then, I entered Cornell University for the PhD, and then I got my PhD degree with geological sciences in 2020. And then I started my postdoc or postdoctoral studies in UC Berkeley.
Wow.
So that's another city in the United States.
Yeah.
And that position was for 2 years. And then, in my last year of my postdoc, that was 2022, I basically started to looking for the next position, like the next places that will go.
Sure, yeah.
And then, thanks to some of the connections in Taiwan that I made during my, bachelor and master time, I basically made a contact with some of the people here at the NCU. And then they invited me to give a seminar talk online, both online and in person, basically. And then, I had a great time there for sure at that time. And then, but long before that, before I even went to the U.S., I already knew the NCU already.
Oh, okay. Is this a school that's known for the planetary? Because I know there's a huge satellite.
I know,
somewhere,
there are
which is
lots
quite
of antennas
cool.
here.
So I wonder if is this like a famous school for the subject?
Well, from my perspective,
Sure.
I would say that the NC is probably the number one
Ooh,
university in
nice.
Earth Sciences.
Number
in Earth
one.
Sciences in Taiwan.
Wow.
So,
And that's a very important field to Taiwan, right? Yeah,
so
specifically
NC is
Earth
really
sciences.
strong and at Earth Sciences, or I would say geophysics, and also astronomy and space sciences. So these are something that the NC is proud of. Like we have a strong faculty members with pretty much cool research output across all the fields.
Have you had a chance to be in workshops or consultations, observations with me?
Yeah, sure. So to contextualize this for our viewers, my work is mostly directly with professors. So I actually do a lot of work where I go to different departments. For example, in earth science, I just had one last week. I had an observation in earth science, and I do have to say I'm very impressed by the scale of the earth science at NCU, and particularly, I think that most of my work was with earthquake research, which isn't not the same as what you did, but
no, it's very important.
Super close.
It's super close. Yeah, okay, shows how much I know.
We even use the same kind of the satellite data.
Oh, right. Okay.
Objects.
Oh.
So I study glaciers, and I use satellite images. And then, people who study earthquakes also use satellite images.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there's something similar.
So is it very technical, maybe too technical for this? Is a lot of your work is like GIS, right? Or GIS related?
Quite an amount of my work involves
What kind of software do you use for GIS? I'm curious.
QGIS.
QGIS, okay. QGIS. Yes, I did that in my undergrad, so I have a little bit of experience with QGIS. Yeah. Not relevant to what I do today, unfortunately, but that's interesting. So we do have that parallel there.
Mm-hmm. Well, you had a great shift to a different career.
Yeah, I'm quite happy here, I do have to say. Yep. But I do miss my days of hunkered over at the computer looking at satellite imagery.
I'm still stranded in that. just kidding.
I do miss. There's a certain artistry to it, isn't there? Sort of when you do data presentation like that.
Right.
Do you have that element in your work? Do you find that you have to be a little bit of an artist sometimes?
Well, that depends, I would say. I mean, that depends on your goal. Sometimes, for example, like when we want to get some number based on physics or math, there's basically just a little room to, for your creative mind. But for some other, for example, like making a map, creating a map, or classifying some of the surfaces on the land or even other planet, that's where you can put your creation. I mean, there's a room to design and to present your visual materials, I would say. Yeah.
It's a really important element to that specific subset in science.
And then that's also important for the science communication, because one of the major goals we do the research is we want to basically broadcast these new findings to the general public. And then on that side, I mean, how you present your research output is going to be super important. So when we're designing those visual clues, like visual materials, like figures or images you use for a media press release, it's actually the top wide priority that we have to consider.
So it's very, very prevalent, very important. So that's not something that I think non-scientists really think about, or people outside the field really, is that how important the actual data presentation is. Yeah, it's just absolutely essential component.
Central. It's there are many central components,
right? Of course,
for doing the researches, and then I would say this one is like the final thing you must take care of.
Right, because you have the underlying data.
And after you've done lots of the data analysis, lots of the workflows using programming languages, and this is the final thing.
Right.
You
How do you
have to
show off
pay
that
attention
work?
to. Yeah.
Great. Going back to your career journey, I'm very curious for students who are curious or thinking about getting a PhD abroad, say in the US, what are some advice you might have for them in terms of application, and then we can maybe jump into just your life in the U.S., in New York and in California?
Well, this is a good question and a big question.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone studies a PhD with a different purpose. Well, at least this is what I saw when I was at Cornell.
Sure.
Some people wanted to have a better life. Some people wanted to focus on the research or scientific explorations for the humankind, and then some people want to contribute to the society, to the earth, and some people just wanted to move to a different country.
Sure. Yeah.
So I would say, if you're interested in study abroad, then you have to really ask yourself, why should I do that? So I will say you really have to you really should outline your purposes.
Yeah.
And then ask yourself, is a PhD, is studying the PhD or studying abroad is the best way to achieve your purpose, your goals. And then this is, well, for me, and probably not only for me, but for many of my friends who study the PhD at Cornell. I mean, well, the PhD is actually a pretty long time.
Yeah,
and then
for
takes like
at least 4 years.
Well,
US
for the United States system, it takes generally 5 years in our fields.
It's a huge commitment.
It's a huge commitment, and then
even
if
just
you study, and then if you study social sciences, that could be even longer.
Right.
And then, I mean, well, some of my friends, I mean, well, they feel exhausted, like in the last few years, and then that's the time that you feel like without strong motivation, that
without a purpose,
you will hardly proceed. So I will suggest, I mean, well, not strongly suggest because I understand, well, there are different life paths, but if you ask me, I would say that, well, before you do your homework and ask yourself about a few questions regarding your motivation, regarding your career goals.
Wow. And what was your purpose at the time, if you don't mind sharing?
Well,
when you're a bit younger.
Finding resources are my purposes. So I'm interested in, as I said, well, planetary sciences.
Right.
And then I wanted to study something different, something hard to be found in Taiwan. And then I was fascinated in our natural world as well. So I thought, well, if I wanted to go to the academia, planetary science will be one of them.
So academia was your goal from the start, or research.
Well, I thought about that. Well, I never say that. Well, I only wanted to go to the academia, but it's definitely one of my many goals.
Sure,
I see.
And well, I'm now sticking to this goal.
Exactly. You're here. You're a professor.
You've made it.
Right. Yeah, this is because I found, well, there are actually many advantages for you to stick into, well, there are pros and cons for a person who is in the academia. So for me, well, where were we at? Oh, yeah. So the motivation for me is to find resources and training that you wouldn't be able to find in Taiwan.
Right.
But I actually shifted it a little bit.
Okay.
And that was because my first round of the application actually failed. All failed. Then there was one professor who I contacted, told me that, well, I actually don't have any positions for you right now as a PhD student, but I have a colleague who study earth sciences.
Oh.
And then, well, he's looking for the graduate student, and then if you're interested, I can actually introduce you to him. Okay. And I'm saying, yeah, sure, why not? And then it turns out, well, that person became my PhD advisor.
Wow.
And then the project topic he was mentioning at the time was actually the glacier studies. And then so this new potential advisor, well, Matt Pritchard at Cornell. So we had a meeting, and then he basically just explained to me like what is the research topic he was able to provide with me. And then I realized, well, that's for the glacier studies. And then I was like, so the glaciers on the Earth, that sounds like super fun because it's actually the topic that I can treat the Earth as a whole, as a planetary object.
I see, yeah.
So I felt, well, at the time, I felt that, well, it's nothing, it's not a huge difference. It's not a huge deviation from my original career goal. So I decided to do the shift and then enter the field of the glaciology.
So you adapted as you went and sort of like to what opportunities were available to you. Right. Something that you could still achieve your goals, but
with a different flavor.
With a different flavor. I like it. I like it.
Right. But it turned out I really like this flavor.
And you stuck with it.
I stuck with that. So for now, so most of my major active projects are for glaciers around the Earth. But I also have a few projects that are looking at the ice bodies in the different planets.
Right. Wow.
So I'm actually studying on that kind of cross sections between the earth sciences and planetary sciences.
The non-earth sciences. Yeah.
Right.
I'm working with
outside of earth sciences.
a couple PhD students and helping them apply for PhD programs. And I heard you say maybe you cold email like a professor or two. Does that often work? Because I've tried just cold emailing or like trying to maybe get a job through just emailing, LinkedIn. What do you recommend that? And maybe I could suggest that to my
Good question.
students.
I would say warm emails are always better than cold emails, and cold emails are always better than nothing.
Oh, okay.
So I typically tried hard to see if I can build a connection before I wanted to really contact someone for a purpose.
Sure.
So because that I know that I will get a warm email, then I will have a higher success rate to get a proper response. But if I expect that there's no opportunity before I can send an email, then I will do a cold email. That's for sure, because I know,
Yeah. Okay.
it's still a cold email, even it is a code.
There's still something.
Right. Yeah, it's still something.
Yeah.
It's still a first step towards the potential future collaboration.
Yeah, no, thank you for that advice. I think
so. Yeah,
it's useful.
Yeah, it's a last resort, but it's still much better than nothing.
Got it. And then how was your life at Cornell? And then how was your life at Berkeley? So I lived in Berkeley, or not in Berkeley, sorry, near Berkeley.
Near Berkeley.
My whole life. So I'm curious, what is your thoughts and experiences with that area as a foreigner?
As a foreigner.
Or a PhD student, postdoc.
Well, so two places I stayed, I lived in the United States, are kind of like super different.
Yeah.
So
very far away for one. Yeah.
Well, they're very far away, and they're different in terms of the city size, populations, and the natural environment. So
going from California winter to New York winter, I can imagine.
Seasons to no seasons.
The upstate New York winter versus winter. Yeah, so it's a huge difference. Huge population, huge, I would say, demographic composition as well. I met lots of the Hispanic people when I was in California, but I didn't meet quite a lot in upstate New York, and then things like that.
Right.
So, I enjoyed some components. For example, I really enjoyed the winter in Ithaca in the state
Cornell,
of New York at Cornell. I love snow.
Oh.
I even love to, dig out my car.
Yeah.
Wow.
It was buried by snow. I feel like it's actually the time of the meditation.
Ooh.
Although I know many people don't agree with me.
Yeah.
I think I understand what you mean. Like it's a calming time. Things are very still. Things don't move very much.
Right.
Unless you're rushing to work.
That's true. It's true.
Unless you rush to work.
Yeah.
And then in California, I enjoyed the temperature. It's
beautiful.
It's so comfortable and
All the
beautiful
time. Almost all the time.
Like all the time.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
Moving to Taiwan in August was quite a transition.
It's quite a transition. Well, today the weather actually.
Right now it's quite beautiful.
Perfect.
Yeah.
It's perfect.
But in August when I first arrived, you step outside the airport and it's just
I know.
so humid, so sticky. Yeah, it's
first
just
impression
in
of
your
Taiwan.
face.
Yeah. It's your first impression of Taiwan. Yeah.
The humidity as much as the heat. It's really really jarring.
It is.
My goodness.
And did you ever want to stay in California or in the U.S. to pursue your career goals?
Well, I thought about that, but I guess it has something to do with my personality, I guess. Well, so I like things to change. And then I feel like, well, I actually thought about staying in the United States forever, but I thought I probably wouldn't be really willing to do that because, I feel like, after several years of the stay, I'll feel bored. I'll feel that I probably wanted to seek for a new challenge, a new environment, and new connections.
So it wasn't always in your intention to come back to Taiwan eventually?
It's one of the options.
It's one of your options.
It's one of the options. Well, so before I studied abroad, I actually got the government fellowship.
Oh,
So
okay.
it's I don't really know the English name of it, but I guess here I can say that. in
Yeah, I think our
Chinese.
viewers
So
are
it's
Chinese.
So it's a 公费留学. So I'm qualified for the 公费留学.
What could you maybe explain a little bit what that is?
So it's basically the scholarship, the fellowship
From
that
the Taiwanese government.
Taiwanese government provide the Ministry of Education provides to.
So you have a little bit of a debt of gratitude towards the Taiwanese government in that regard, since they handed you this.
kind of. So
Huh.
it's selected. Well, so there is a selection. So there
Yeah,
is a
yeah,
thing,
yeah.
Like to see where to see who they wanted to give grant to, and then I was one of them. Actually, they select one person in each study field every single year.
Wow.
So I was lucky to be selected.
Very competitive, yeah.
As one of the nominees at 1 year. So I get 3 years of the sponsorship from the Taiwan government. And that basically covers my first 3 years at Cornell.
Whoa.
And
In addition to whatever else Cornell offered?
in addition to that, but Cornell was aware of that as well.
Oh, okay.
So
So
they
they-
didn't
yeah.
Outside funding, yeah.
they only pay something extra that basically just sufficient to cover my living expenses.
Right, I see.
And tuition, things like that. So it's not much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not much. We're actually considered as a low income family when my wife was pregnant.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's the time we started to do lots of medical checks because of the pregnancy.
Oh, in
And
the
then-
United States.
Right, at the New York States. And then somebody told us that, well, your income, if you only have this teaching fellowship from Cornell, then you're qualified for the low income family. And it turns out to be true.
Wow. That's challenging.
That's challenging.
Yeah. Whoa.
But the one good thing is that, we didn't have lots of cost of living as well.
Your expenses were low.
Right. So we managed it.
And Ithaca is quite it's quite remote. Not remote, but it's not really it's a very small
not-
it's a
Right,
small
and
town.
setting.
That's also an
Yeah.
advantage. Like
Yeah.
you don't have lots of you don't have a high house rent.
Oh.
Well, the rent is a little bit higher than the surrounding areas, but it's not as high as, for example, like New York City,
Right, I
or
see.
Berkeley.
or Berkeley. Berkeley is like crazy high.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Berkeley is like ridiculously high rent, and then we actually had a what is that called? A strike. So
While you
when
were
I
there.
was
for the UC system.
for the UC system. Oh, you knew that?
Yeah.
you know that.
This was in 2022.
2022.
Yeah.
End of 2022.
I'm a college career teacher,
Oh, nice.
counselor, and so I was quite aware of
Yeah.
what was happening at the time.
Right. I also actively participated in the strike.
Whoa,
Wow.
wow.
Right. So basically for you,
Yeah.
so the strike was basically initiated by the graduate union and
Right.
the postdoc union of the UC system, the United of the California system. And then the major thing we wanted to seek for was basically a higher pay,
Right.
and a higher benefit.
And something about housing too, right?
And something about the housing, because after the COVID,
Yeah.
the entire
Inflation.
Bay Area is increasing the housing rent at a ridiculous rate, and then has become an unaffordable rate for lots of the graduate students. And then, we had heard about lots of stories like a graduate student have no choice but stayed with a shared room with the other people, and then he was like sleeping on the couch like every night just because of that.
Well, not a stable living situation at all.
Right.
Yeah, purely because of the cost of living crisis. Yeah, and the lack of university support in that regard. That must be very frustrating from your perspective, because obviously, like, you've objectively succeeded in what you've done in your life. Like, you've worked very hard and you've gotten to a point where it's very successful, but you get in this situation where it's still not able to support even most basic of living.
Right.
Did that contribute at all to why you ultimately ended up coming back to Taiwan and then NCU?
Well, I would say I don't know. Well, maybe that is something I counted for when I made a decision, but it's definitely not the main reason.
Sure.
I mean, well, the main reason why I decided to come back to Taiwan was that I saw an opportunity, and then I saw a need that the people in Taiwan must participate in saving the planet. To reduce by reducing our emission. And then as I said, so before I came back, there was basically no resources in planetary science, and this is actually also true for the glaciology. So
you mentioned that you left because there wasn't that one of the motivations for doing a PhD abroad is that there weren't opportunities to do what you wanted to do in Taiwan. And now that you've come back again, those opportunities exist more now?
I would say not much.
Not much?
Well, maybe there are one or two more groups, but it's not much. It's not growing as fast as the other tech fields.
I see.
For example, like electric engineer.
Yeah, we just had an electrical engineering student on the pod.
Yeah, this is something Taiwan is like super strong at. So.
And it also sounds like one of the reasons you're back is to be a resource and to create more opportunities and to educate.
I wanted to bring these resources back to Taiwan to educate people.
Absolutely.
But second, and I think is probably more important than the first one, which is to make the people in Taiwan fully aware of what is changing on the earth. Like,
and does that start with the government, or like who are you? I guess who's the audience?
Everyone, I would say. The government, public sectors, private sectors, or even the general publics.
Wow.
So, the first thing first is that we have to promote this awareness to the people in Taiwan. Taiwan don't have any glaciers.
Right.
So we're kind of like lag behind about what is happening to the glaciers worldwide. But if we don't know what's happening, then we don't. How to say that? So if we don't know what's happening, then we will not be able to find a solution. But the issues we are facing it's something that we need everybody to find a solution.
Yeah. It's like all hands on deck.
Right.
Situation.
For example, like global warming. Like, one of the major strategy we can do to mitigate the global warming is to reduce the carbon emission, right? But if there are some countries who don't want to collaborate, then this won't happen.
Right.
I see. So really need to like push for a public solution as much as a
for some global challenges that we simply need everyone to participate in. So I would say I have a mission here. So my mission is to just bring this awareness to the people in Taiwan. so that we know about what's going on around the Earth, and then we know that's gonna be an urgent situation for the Earth. Then we have to find a solution, probably in the next 5 years or 10 years.
So it's interesting you talk about like the need for like public education and public interaction between sort of you on the sort of science end, where you have an understanding of what the impact is, versus the actual policy, which is something that is, I think, disconnected from your field. And it's, how do you feel about your role inside of all of that? You view yourself as an educator, someone who is someone who who spreads ideas publicly, or what do you think?
Well, I tend to see myself as a researcher. Rather than an educator, because I like to explore new things, and then this is the major reason why I wanted to step in the academia. But as a researcher, the responsibility as a researcher does not only include the scientific exploration. It also includes how you spread your words to the general public, like how you let the people know that what you're doing and what's your finding, and then what you do could change the Earth.
I see. Yeah. So the knowledge that if you can't explain the knowledge effectively for someone, then it's not valuable. It lacks a sort of a goal. Yeah. Right.
So I will probably say, researcher or maybe science communicator. And then, I also recognize that the educator, the science education is something that we do a lot, like on a daily basis.
Right.
Basically. I'm at the university system, so this is one of the responsibilities. But if you're asking me for the balance, I'll probably lean to those research and science communications a little bit more than educations.
Got it.
Taiwan has already a strong basis of an education system. For example, like if you ask some people random questions regarding STEM,
sure, yeah.
I guess, you typically can get a satisfied answer. You won't get answers something like, the Earth is flat.
Yeah.
Things like that. So, we already have a strong foundation for that.
Yeah.
And then you also have a piece that, although I don't really quite rely on that, but if you look for some quantitative metrics, then it also says the same thing. So I guess at this time, it's more important for me to spread out the new findings than to educate people in terms of the old knowledges.
I see. So you view yourself as sort of the forefront of the field rather than baseline education. Right. Yeah, that makes sense. So your job is to talk to sort of maybe people that would be involved in policy rather than sort of an average person.
The policymakers are basically just our stakeholders.
Right.
So we regularly communicate with them. And then, for example, like at the NCU, we funded an institution called the Taiwan Polar Institution last year. And then one of the goals for this, like one of our purposes for funding this, is actually to interact with some, government facilities or, the facilities from a different country. We wanted to build a different kinds of levels of interaction so that we can speak to each other on the same basis, basically. So, in the other word, we wanted to create not only person-to-person interaction, but we also wanted to create, for example, like inter-institutional or intergovernmental communication. And sometimes I feel like this is probably more efficient than the communications between, for example, two research groups or two individuals.
There's a lot more clarity provided in what either can do if they both have an understanding of each other to that same extent. Right. And that's something you're heavily involved in?
Yeah, that's something I'm actively involved in.
Oh, that's very interesting.
Very cool.
So, to what extent? I don't know. To what extent is like NCU involved in polar research? I'm curious.
We just got started.
Just got started.
So,
okay.
Yeah. So as I said, well, this institute was funded last year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh,
and
okay.
then not many years ago, we started to make a connection with some Polish researchers.
Okay.
They have.
Do they have a base down there? I think
they have an Arctic base. They have
Okay.
an Arctic research station in a place called the Svalbard.
in Svalbard. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
So
It's in Norway.
yeah, we actually made an agreement with them so that we can use their research station for a period of time every year.
Oh.
And then now we are also building our own in Longyearbyen, so the capital of the Svalbard.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And you think that eventually they will be sending some Taiwanese researchers up there, or
We are already doing this.
you're already doing that?
Yeah, so
Okay.
for-
not
for-
from NCU, but from another
from the
institute.
NCU. From
From
the
NCU,
Yeah,
really?
no, NCU
Okay.
is put NCU on
We're
the map.
worldwide.
Yeah.
Yeah, worldwide. So, like, these years, I mean, well, this kind of practice, I think it started 2 years ago,
Okay.
or maybe 3, I can't remember. But so the things we're doing right now is to basically send them for a pioneer studies. So like we want them to go there and then see what kind of things they can do with the utilities and resources provided by the Polo Station.
Wow.
So, and then this year we actually wrote a grant proposal to NSTC, the National Science and Technology Council. And then we got this grant, which is about, I would say, $10 million in
Wow.
TWD. Yeah. So yeah, it's quite a amount of money, then, which means that we are now actually starting to doing some cool things. In the
Yeah.
pool.
Now that you have the
Very
money,
cool.
now that you have the
Cold,
money,
yeah.
you can start making moves.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
this year is actually the first year we're starting this the formal research regarding the Arctic.
So will you be going?
Well, I plan to go next year.
Wow.
The summer next year. Summer
That's so
2025.
exciting. Have you done research like that before, or like on site? I'm just very curious. I don't know anything about this field.
Well, my expertise is
Yeah.
glaciology and remote sensing.
Yeah.
And I primarily used remote sensed data to study glaciers.
Uh-huh.
So for me, well, it's not necessary for me to actually go to
Right,
the field.
right, yeah.
I typically have my colleagues to do that.
Sure.
But if I want, yes, why not? I
Yeah.
mean, well, sometimes you just need to double check what you see on the satellite cameras, right?
Yeah.
So yes, it's optional, but we would go if we have a chance or a budget.
Wow. Well, that's incredibly exciting.
yeah.
I'm very interested to hear more about that and sort of in future times at NCU.
Yeah. Now you're gonna have to stay another year
Yeah.
to continue to figure.
Any English teachers up there? Can you send me to Norway? Oh,
Yeah, you can stay tuned. I mean, well, we have we're pretty ambitious
That's awesome.
in developing this institution. So
Yeah, that's really great, because oftentimes we hear students say NCU is boring, or like we don't know what's so great about NCU, and so to have a professor come out and say like
yeah.
you're maybe leading and experts in this field, at least in Taiwan, maybe,
Yeah.
it's quite unique.
Yeah, and this isn't something that other schools in Taiwan are doing, right?
no, we're
Yeah,
we're the only
exactly.
one.
You're the
Yeah,
leader
we're
and you're the expert.
We're good.
Go to
Exactly.
the NCU.
Yeah.
Go to the NCU.
Thank you for your time, Professor Whyjay.
Really appreciate it.
I learned so much today. I don't have any knowledge in this field at all, and so to hear you talk about your career journey and your research, just want to say I appreciate your time, and thanks for doing
you.
this.
Yeah, thank you
for
so much.
hosting this.
Really appreciate it.
Cool.
Yeah, cool.
So this is the end of this podcast, this episode, and thank you again, William, for joining. Thank you, Professor Whyjay, for joining. Next week we'll hopefully have Alden back.
No
Thank
more
you.
William. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you very
But
much.
other professors.
Yeah, that'd be good. Okay.
Thanks.
We clap ourselves. Yeah, woo, good job, us.
Yeah.
Yeah.